Hey there, scary story fanatics! Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone, with your host, Sociopathic. I suppose... What did I tell you? Get back in your cage! Sorry about that. I suppose that sometimes a pet needs to learn its place. So, find your place next to your monitor screens and tie your pets down tight. This story's got one hell of a bite. The Monster of Pope Lick Creek.
Alright, so nobody believes me, and I'm facing criminal sentencing tomorrow, so I've got to get this out. Make a record of what really happened out there before the powers that be, possibly convince me that the whole thing did indeed happen, the way they say it did. But I'm telling you right fucking now that this is how shit went down. I'm a senior in high school. At least, I was, before I was kicked from the program due to current circumstances. We were scheduled to graduate in only a couple of weeks. I grew up in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Kentucky. My buddy and I, Jared, wanted to pull off some kind of stunt to commemorate our graduation. We had decided upon spray painting our class year and initials on the Trestle Railroad Bridge, stretching over a fenced-off, grassy valley nestled between two woody foothills on either side, an old creek in the center. The bridge stretched nearly 50 feet in the air, and the area reportedly occupied by a creature living in the forests nearby. The area had been fenced off to fend off thrill-seekers and urban legend enthusiasts, put into place after a few subsequent injuries and deaths. It's not like they would have come in vast numbers, but every now and then, a group of adventurers would try and sneak up to that old bridge to get a glimpse of the creature so that they could say they saw him or brag about it on some random blog. More times than not, the individuals would get nabbed by local police while trying to ascend the 8-foot fence and be brought up on charges for trespassing. Of course, our girlfriends, Mary and Anna, insisted on coming along once Jared blabbed at lunch what we were doing. Mary shared Jared's enthusiasm, talking about how cool it would be to add her initials to the side of the trestle bridge before Jared hushed her, trying not to draw the attention of eavesdropping ears. Anna, next to me, sat quietly, slightly reserved about what we were planning to do. She didn't really want to go at first, but my dumbass self convinced her of how much fun we were going to have, and that this would be our last chance at doing something a little adolescently stupid before our high school years were over. We were all 18, and our parents had pretty much stopped inquiring about every detail of our activities, giving us the room any of-age teenager needs to flourish into a competent adult. We agreed to meet up at my place before piling into my car alone and driving to where we would park and hike in. I already had Anna with me, and Jared arrived with Mary in tow. I told my parents that we were just going out for a drive, maybe a late evening movie at the distant local mall, before pulling away in my surprisingly well-maintained first vehicle, a 1998 Chevy Blazer. We still had a couple of hours before the onset of night, but we would need the extra daylight to walk in. The valley of the immediate area of the trestle bridge is fenced off and frequently patrolled. However, we devised a plan to park the car a few hundred yards away from the tracks on a side road and hike the tracks themselves for about 5 miles to the bridge. Like I said, I live in the middle of grassy nowhere, surrounded by fields of wheat, tobacco, and corn, so I had done my fair share of walking, mostly for fun, and had a decent approximate guess of how long the trek would take. I hadn't yet pulled into place before Jared sparked a bowl of nuggets. There wasn't a car to be seen for miles, so as I pulled down the side road to the right, I grabbed the pipe from Jared's hand in the back seat. After I pulled the SUV to the side of the road and parked it, I offered the bowl to Anna in the passenger seat.
No thanks. I don't want any right now.
I shrugged and handed it back just before Mary grabbed it from my hand, before I had a chance to complete the motion.
More for us, then.
Mary chuckled as she placed the steel to her lips and lit the bell piece with a lighter in her other hand. While the two passed the piece back and forth between themselves in the back, Anna and I got out of the vehicle. I walked right to the back, opened both the hatch and the tailgate, and retrieved the plastic bottle of mid-shelf whiskey that I had stashed under a few old blankets, along with a couple cans of yellow aerosol spray paint. I handed one can to Jared and stuffed the other as far as I could into my back pocket, a little over half encased in the denim while the remainder jutted out above the pocket. Excited with anticipation, we began our journey back down the road and across the main road and on up to the tracks. Once out of sight of the main road, I cracked open the bottle and handed it to Jared.
So, what's so special about this place that we have to hike so far in?
Anna asked the group in slight confusion.
What do you mean? Because the area by the bridge is fenced off. That's why.
Jared looked back and told her with a smile.
No, I mean, why is the place all fenced off? What's so special about that particular place?
Oh my God, really? You've lived here how long, and you've never heard of the Pope-Lick monster?
Mary asked her, amazement in her expression. Anna lowered her head a little, an embarrassed smile on her face.
Well, now I feel a little left out.
Okay, so...
Hold on. We don't want her all freaking out now, do we?
Jared interrupted Mary.
Maybe you're right.
Mary said with a notable teasing in her tone before taking a swig of the bottle, followed by a drag from her lit cigarette.
Oh, come on. Now I really want to know.
All right then, what do you think?
Mary turned and asked Jared.
I think Tim should tell the story. He always seems to tell it the best.
Jared stated, referring to me. Okay. Well, it all happened back sometime in the late 1960s, I believe. I began with the tale. Back then, there was this traveling carnival. Particular of this carnival was its freak show side attractions. The more prominent and financially valuable one was the Sheep Man. This odd-looking freak show attraction had the fur-covered legs of a goat, a grotesque and deformed human torso, and the head of a sheep, highlighted with two long, curling, ram-like horns. No one really knows how the boy became such a monstrous sight. Some say his parents worshipped the devil and sacrificed goats in exchange for supernatural powers. But in actuality, no one really knows where he came from. What is known is that the creature suffered mistreatment from his keeper, to say the least. He was kept in a cage like an animal, fed like an animal, and beat like an animal.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
Anna cut in.
Oh, just wait. It gets better.
So anyway, I continued on. One night, while this carnival is located just outside of Louisville, the owner goes to put the creature thing back into his cage after the day's festivities. Like many nights before this one, the boy thing began to fight the man, obviously not enjoying being confined in such deplorable conditions. So the man goes to begin beating him again. When this time the boy is grown so big, he's finally able to push this guy over. While the dude scrambles to his feet, the thing grabs a wood axe nearby and begins to threaten his owner.
Did he chop him up?
Anna jumped in again after a tiny take from the bottle.
No, not quite.
Mary cut in with a smile. Jared just kept his focus forward, walking down the tracks, his face locked with a sinister grin. No, I answered. He managed to fend off the guy while he made his way out the door, the axe still in his hand. The thing ran up an old nearby creek with the sideshow's proprietor in close chase behind him. At least, that's what the creature's keeper told the local police. Before he could even get close to his now escaping cash cow, he watched it approach the tracks up on the hill near the trestle bridge beneath an ever-darkening sky, just as the train passed by. By the time the man had made it up to the last place where he had seen his attraction, the train was nearly finished passing by, and the sheepman gone. After recruiting local law enforcement and searching the area, the guy concluded that the thing likely hopped the train as it passed, a theory also supported by the now involved police. He eventually moved on, having to stay with the carnival, but was furious at doing so. No one ever really thought much of it after that, not for a long time. Not until the sightings began. At first, people reported seeing a man-sized sheep-goat man thing standing atop the trestle bridge late at night, silhouetted by the moonlight above. Others say they've seen a similar creature stalking their backyards at night. The reason those fences are in place, however, is the murders. Some people who have heard of the Poplick monster have come to that old trestle bridge to catch a glimpse of him. Most end up injured or dead. People that have come back alive tell they saw a horned monster near the tracks, holding what looked like to be a large wood axe. Some say that just the sight of him is enough to make a person commit suicide. The cops obviously never support the stories and claim the deaths and injuries are due to accidents, and the fence was erected for more insurance purposes. But the truth is, he could still be out there, full grown and ready to take revenge on people for his mistreatment. I finished. We deliberated amongst each other about the topic for a while, and before we knew it, our destination was upon us. The four of us had shared that bottle about halfway through by the time it had begun getting dark, and the bridge had grown near. The railroad bridge extended high into the air on trestles, had no side railing or guardrail. Sure, it was wide enough to encompass the width of a train, but the bridge itself extended for several hundred yards, and we had set our minds that we would get as close to the center as possible. We figured that in the dark, we'd be able to see the lights of an approaching train from far enough in the distance that we would have ample time to get to the edge of the bridge opposite the side of any oncoming trains. However, the closer we got, despite our intoxication, the idea of crossing out into the middle of that trestle bridge seemed more and more like a bad one. We stood there for a minute or two, just feet from the edge of the bridge.
Is anyone else thinking this is a bad idea?
I'm with Mary. Why don't we just hang out here for a bit? I don't really want to go onto that bridge. If a train comes, we might not have enough time to get off in the dark.
I honestly would pick on you two for chickening out, but I kind of agree with you. I'm pretty drunk and I really don't trust myself not to stumble over and fall off the edge.
No matter what we decide to do, I gotta go pee. I'll be right back.
Mary finished, telling Jared before sauntering off into the nearby tree line and disappeared into the darkness. We could hear the snapping of twigs and rustle of leaves that she tromped through, signifying her location only a few yards away. Then, the sounds stopped, presumably due to her finding a suitable tree. We again stood around talking and drinking for at least 10 minutes, before one of us finally realized that Mary had not returned.
Mary!
What's she doing, man? Dropping a deuce?
You think so, right? Jeez. Mary?
Jared continued to call her, facing the direction she had entered the woods.
Hey, come here. I want to show you something, honey.
Really, Mary? Now?
I'll be back in a few, guys.
Yeah, I bet you will only be a few. I chuckled, teasing my friend.
Shut up, man.
Was Jared's famous last response before heading into the tree line in search of the source of Mary's voice. Anna and I began joking with each other about the two in the woods when we heard Jared's footsteps stop. I don't think I even had a chance to get the punchline out by the time I heard the rustling in the woods, creeping ever closer to the tracks, cloaked by the darkness and trees. Wow, man. Even I didn't know you were that fast. Talk about a minute, man. Normally, as I expected this time, I would hear some general weak comeback like, "Shut up," or "You would know." Instead, I heard nothing. Just the rustle of leaves getting ever closer until I saw Jared's clothes appear from within the darkness. He emerged from the trees slightly closer to the bridge than I and turned immediately in the direction of it, walking towards it. "Hey man, are you okay?" I asked him, concerned about his sluggish and staggered movement and approach towards the trestle bridge. "Jared!" I yelled to him, but he continued without hesitation or words, stepping out onto the bridge, walking in between the steel railroad tracks. Now I was concerned. I didn't know what had happened in the woods, but I feared for my friend possibly tripping or stumbling off the side and plummeting to his death.
What's he doing?
I don't know. Stay here and call for Mary. I'm gonna go get him and bring him back.
Be careful.
I nodded to her as I began to cautiously follow Jared out onto the bridge. Anna began calling to Mary, not getting any response in turn. Jared had gotten out a ways now, nearly halfway out into the center of the bridge. As slow as I had been going, his sluggish movement made it pretty easy to catch up. "Jer!" I yelled to him. I had been calling him repeatedly, Jared never once ever acknowledging that I was there. Halfway, he just stopped. He stopped and faced the side of the bridge and took one step forward before stopping again. "Jared, what the fuck, man? Come on. Let's go back before we get ourselves killed." Jared just stared straight ahead over the valley at an angle that would not yet let me see his face. It wasn't until I was about 5 feet from him and reached out for his shoulder that he ever so slowly turned his head to look at me. His expression left me absolutely speechless. He was terrified. Not just terrified, though. It was like he had seen something irrationally horrifying, like staring into the abyss of hell, and his face had gotten stuck that way. The only inkling of consciousness residing in his agonizingly fearful eyes. I opened my mouth to say something, and he just jumped. I watched his brightly colored blue clothes descend into the darkness below me until only the fuzzy blur of a blue shape was all that could be identified. And then, a bone-crunching thud.
Did he just...
I heard from a distance, in the direction where I had come. I turned and yelled back to her. He just fucking jumped!
Tim!
Anna called out to me. I thought I knew why. But then, I saw the terrain begin to light up around me, in a way a dark road does just before the onset of approaching headlights. Then she yelled out to me again, only louder, more frantic.
Tim!
I had guessed by that point what it was, but I turned around to check anyway, hoping that I was wrong. In the distance, on the other side of the bridge, was a rapidly approaching train, underscored by the vibrant illumination at its front.
Hurry!
She didn't have to tell me to. I was already scrambling as fast as I could to get back to her and off the bridge, before the train would tear me apart between the tracks and wheels, or force me to jump myself, all while doing my best to ensure I wouldn't trip and fall in my panicked state. I was moving pretty quick, but that train was moving a lot faster. It was only a dozen or so yards away when I had finally landed foot on safe ground, the conductor blowing the horn, likely pissed and shaken up over nearly creaming me. I grabbed a hold of Anna, both of us happy that I was alive, before we both began breaking down over Jared. I was still clinging to the hope that he may still be alive. Even then, I knew it was a foolish idea, but I just wouldn't accept his death right away. We both then started discussing the whereabouts of Mary, unable to search for her, as the forest that she had entered and ourselves were now separated by the passing train. We waited in each other's arms for the train to pass. Once it did, we began our slow approach towards the tracks. Only 2 steps later, we were halted by the sight of something come flying out of the woods in a heavy, limp disposition and hit the tracks with a thud and splatter. The warm fluid had gotten the both of us in the face, and as we began to wipe it free in smears with our hands, we both reeled back as we instantly recognized the bloody mass as a mutilated human being. It only took a couple of seconds to accurately identify what was left of the face and clothes to realize who it was. Someone, or something, had thrown the mutilated body of Mary out through the tree line and onto the tracks with a force so incredible it couldn't have been a natural beast. I didn't take an extra second staring at the hacked up and gouged remains of Mary before I grabbed a hold of Anna and started running. Anna had been frozen in fear and needed a good tug to get going. We ran in the dark, down the tracks until our lungs began to hurt. And that's when it happened. I fucking tripped. Honestly, I was still terrified, but I figured we had gained at least some distance between us and our would-be attacker, especially having not heard him behind us the entire time we'd been running. I fell onto my hands and felt Anna's frantic pulling on the back of my shirt, trying to help me to my feet when I felt her grip get torn from my shirt, happening simultaneously with a panicked scream from her. I scrambled upward and spun around, forcing myself back into a sitting position. And that's when I saw him. The monster of Pope Lick Creek. He had Anna in one of his arms and an axe hanging long in the other. He stood exactly as I had described him earlier, his horns extensive and curling like a ram, his face long, sported with a thick, wide snout and 2 black, beady eyes. His legs were long and covered with thick fur, each capped with a black hoof at the end and an animal's haunch at the other. The thing threw Anna to the ground before him as I screamed out for her. "Anna!" She had time to turn and give me one last glance before I watched the head of a large wood axe get buried deep into her skull and destroying her brain, nearly splitting her face in half. It turned and looked at me, taking a step towards me. I was to my feet now and did the only thing I could think of. I pulled the spray can peeking out from my back pocket, removed the cap with a single motion, and sprayed that motherfucker right in his beady eyes. The beast dropped the axe and lifted its large, clawed hands to its face and covered its eyes. The creature let out a deep, agonized bellow, and I took the opportunity I had given myself and ran. I ran until my chest felt as though it were on fire, like I had inhaled battery acid, and I still didn't stop. I ran past the point of my muscles cramping. I ran as fast as I could until I felt a sudden dizziness and passed out. I awoke under the dull gray sky of early morning. The first thing I remember was being lifted to my feet by someone. I didn't notice his uniform at first. It was the flashing lights on his car. I'd been found by railroad police. They asked me what I was doing out there, and at first I lied and told them nothing about what had happened. It was when the local police had discovered the mutilated bodies of my friends that I felt compelled to tell my side of the story. Like I said, it doesn't matter. Tomorrow is my sentencing. The police once again copped everything up to trespassing and subsequent injuries due to drug and alcohol use. But I'm telling you right now, it wasn't an accident. So, mind the fences surrounding the old trestle bridge. Listen to me. The monster of Poplick Creek, Kentucky is very real. If you don't believe me, that's fine. Just don't go look for yourself.
Well, I sure hope we all learned a lesson. A good pet is only as good as you treat it. I said get down, boy! Well, assuming I don't become another shredded squeaky toy anytime soon, make sure to follow your animal instincts back here next weekend. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all next Saturday.